Have you ever looked at someone at the absolute pinnacle of their field? A musician who seems to channel the divine, an athlete whose physical prowess defies belief, a tech mogul who reshaped the very fabric of our world. And ask yourself, honestly, how'd they get there? It's a question that hums beneath the surface of our culture, a quiet, persistent enigma. We're fed a simple, almost mythic story from childhood. That success is a direct result of individual merit. It's a cocktail of innate talent, a dash of grit, and an unshakable work ethic. We are told that the world is a meritocracy, and the brightest and the best rise to the top, pulled upward by the sheer force of their own genius. And yet, if we are truly honest with ourselves, we know that formula feels incomplete. We all know people who are brilliant but have not succeeded. We know people who work tirelessly, who burn the midnight oil for years, yet remain stuck. We've seen flashes of our own potential, moments of clarity and skill that feel world-class, only to see them fade without ever blossoming into that grand success we dream of. This disconnect between the story we're told and the reality we observe can be a source of deep, personal frustration. It makes us question our own abilities, our own worth. Are we not smart enough? Do we not want it badly enough? Or is there something else at play, a hidden architecture to achievement that we simply haven't been shown? This very question, this chasm between myth and reality, became an obsession for a journalist named Malcolm Gladwell. He wasn't content with the simple answers. He was a pattern seeker, a man who looked at the world and saw not a series of random, disconnected events, but a web of intricate, often invisible connections. He embarked on a journey not to debunk the importance of hard work, but to uncover the rest of the story, the hidden variables in the equation of success. He wanted to understand the outliers, not just by celebrating their brilliance, but by dissecting the very soil from which they grew. And what he found changes not just how we see them, but more importantly, how we see ourselves and our own potential. Before Gladwell began to piece together this new map of achievement, our understanding was almost entirely rooted in the cult of the individual. The prevailing narrative was that of the lone genius, the bootstraps hero who, through sheer willpower and superior intellect, bends the world to their vision. Think of the stories we valorize. The starving artist in the garret who produces a masterpiece, the college dropout in a garage who builds a global empire. These are stories of triumph against the odds, where the protagonist's internal qualities are the sole engine of their ascent. This worldview is comforting because it's simple and it places all the power within us. It suggests that anyone, from anywhere, can make it if they just have the right stuff. This narrative permeated everything, from biographies of great leaders to the way we structured our education system, which is fundamentally designed to find and elevate those with the most obvious, measurable talent. We created gifted programs for the smartest kids, believing we were identifying the future titans of industry and art. We celebrated IQ scores as a definitive measure of potential. The world, in this view, was a great race, and those with the swiftest legs and the strongest hearts were destined to win. But this model leaves too much unexplained. It doesn't account for the legions of certified geniuses who lead ordinary lives. It doesn't explain why certain pockets of the world, at certain moments in history, seem to produce a staggering number of brilliant minds, like Florence during the Renaissance or Silicon Valley in the late 20th century. Was there something in the water? Or was the story we were telling ourselves fundamentally flawed? This was the intellectual landscape Gladwell sought to explore. It was a world that believed success was an essence, something you were born with. The problem was, this belief system is not only incomplete, it can be incredibly destructive. It creates a fixed mindset where we believe our abilities are static. If you're not a natural, then why bother trying? It fosters a sense of hopelessness in those who don't fit the narrow mold of precocious genius, and it breeds a kind of arrogant blindness in those who do succeed, leading them to believe their success is entirely their own making, a product of their unique superiority. This was a before state, a world that worshipped the individual talent and remained willfully ignorant of the complex ecosystem that actually allows that talent to flourish. The stakes were and are immense, because as long as we cling to this incomplete story, we will continue to waste a breathtaking amount of human potential, overlooking countless individuals who could achieve greatness if only they were planted in the right soil. The first major crack in this monolithic myth of individual genius came from a seemingly unlikely place: the roster of a Canadian junior hockey team. As Gladwell peeled back the layers, he noticed a bizarre and statistically impossible pattern. On these elite teams, the ones that serve as feeders to the professional leagues, an overwhelming number of the players were born in the first 3 months of the year: January, February, and March. It was a finding so consistent, it couldn't possibly be a coincidence. Had a cosmic ray of hockey talent just happened to bless babies born in the winter? The answer, he discovered, had nothing to do with astrology and everything to do with hidden structures of opportunity. In Canada, the eligibility cutoff for age class hockey is January 1st. This means that a boy who turns 10 on January 2nd will be playing in the same league for a full year as a boy who doesn't turn 10 until the end of December. At that age, a 12-month difference in physical and cognitive development is a chasm. The older, bigger, more coordinated kids are naturally identified by coaches as the talented ones. They are the ones selected for the elite travel teams. And what happens then? They get better coaching, more ice time, more games against better competition. This small, initial advantage, born entirely of a random birth date, begins to compound. Year after year, the slightly older kids get slightly better opportunities, which makes them slightly better players, which in turn leads to even more opportunities. This is what sociologists call the Matthew effect, a term derived from a biblical verse. For unto every one a half shall be given, and he shall have abundance. It's the principle of accumulated advantage. The initial advantage wasn't talent. It was a simple accident of birth. The talent was a result of the advantage, not the cause of it. This idea radically reframes our understanding of practice. It's not enough to just work hard. You have to be given the chance to work hard. This led Gladwell to explore one of the most famous ideas from the book, the 10,000-hour rule. The research, originally from psychologist Anders Ericsson, suggests that true mastery in any cognitively complex field requires a staggering amount of practice, roughly 10,000 hours. Gladwell uses this lens to re-examine the story of the Beatles. We see them as a bolt of lightning, for preternaturally gifted musicians who appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show fully formed. The truth is far more grueling and mundane. Before they were famous, they accepted a gig in the strip clubs of Hamburg, Germany. The conditions were brutal. The pay was terrible, but they were required to play for hours upon hours, night after night. They played for up to 8 hours a session, 7 days a week. By the time they returned to England, they had performed live an estimated 1,200 times, far more than any of their contemporaries. They hadn't just been born with genius. They had been given a unique, grueling opportunity to put in their 10,000 hours before anyone even knew their names. Hamburg was their version of the elite travel team. The same pattern holds for Bill Gates. We think of him as a visionary who saw the future of software. But the real story is that, as a teenager in the late 1960s, he had access to a school-sponsored, time-sharing computer terminal, a rarity of almost unimaginable proportions for that era. He wasn't just interested in computers. He lived and breathed in that computer lab. He and his friends would sneak out at night to get free programming time at a local university. By the time he dropped out of Harvard to start Microsoft, he had already logged well over 10,000 hours of programming. He didn't just have an idea. He had a massive, accumulated advantage of practice that almost no one else's age on the entire planet possessed. So, the first great principle is that extraordinary achievement is not born of talent alone, but of extraordinary opportunity that allows for an extraordinary amount of practice. The initial problem, why do some people succeed wildly while others don't, finds its first major answer. They were given a chance to outwork everyone else. But this breakthrough, as powerful as it was, created a new and even more profound question. If success is about getting the opportunity to put in your 10,000 hours, then the next logical question is, who gets those opportunities? It became clear that the 10,000-hour rule was a necessary condition, but not a sufficient one. It was only part of the puzzle. There are many people who work hard, many who are given a chance, who still don't reach the stratosphere. There was another, deeper layer at play, a force just as powerful as practice, but far more invisible, the profound and inescapable influence of our cultural legacy. To illustrate this, Gladwell tells the stunningly divergent stories of two certified geniuses, Chris Langdon and Robert Oppenheimer. Langdon possesses an IQ estimated to be between 195 and 210, a score higher than Einstein's. He was a prodigy who could speak at 6 months and read at 3 years old. Yet his adult life has been marked by a series of manual labor jobs and a frustrated intellectual ambition. Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was also a brilliant physicist. But when you examine their lives, the difference wasn't intellect. It was something else, a set of social skills and cultural attitudes that one possessed and the other lacked. Oppenheimer, raised in a wealthy, cultured Manhattan family, learned from a young age how to navigate institutions and negotiate with authority figures. He learned a skill that sociologists call concerted cultivation, where parents actively foster their children's talents and teach them how to interact with the world as equals. When Oppenheimer tried to poison his tutor at Cambridge, a potentially life-ruining event, he successfully negotiated his way into mere probation. Contrast this with Langdon, who grew up in extreme poverty with an abusive stepfather. He never learned how to talk his way out of trouble or how to advocate for himself within a system. When his mother failed to fill out a financial aid form, he lost his scholarship to college. When he tried to convince his administrators to change a class time, they dismissed him, and in his frustration, he dropped out. He had the genius, but he lacked the practical intelligence, the knowledge of how to get what you want from the world, that Oppenheimer had been given as a birthright. This practical intelligence is innate. It's a cultural inheritance. Gladwell extends this idea to explain a series of baffling airline crashes in the late 1990s involving Korean Air. Investigators found no mechanical failures. The pilots were experienced. The problem, it turned out, was cultural. Korean culture is what is known as a high-power distance culture, where respect for hierarchy and authority is deeply ingrained. In the cockpit, this meant that first officers were often unable to challenge or directly question a captain's decision, even when they knew it was catastrophically wrong. They would use mitigated speech, hinting at a problem, instead of stating directly. This cultural legacy, perfectly functional in many contexts, proved deadly at 30,000 feet. The airline only solved its safety problem when it brought in a Western consultant to retrain its pilots to communicate more directly, effectively teaching them to shed a part of their cultural legacy. While in the cockpit, the lesson is profound. The skills and attitudes we inherit from our cultural background, our parents, and our heritage are not just a part of our identity. They are powerful tools or obstacles in our path to success. The legacy of a Jewish immigrant family in the garment trade in New York City, for example, instilled a set of values about meaningful, complex work that perfectly prepared their children to become the pioneering doctors and lawyers of the next generation. A person's success, then, isn't just about the hours they put in. It's about whether their particular cultural inheritance happens to align with the demands of the opportunity they are given. This is the moment where the two streams of inquiry converge, where the separate threads of practice and legacy twist together to form a single, powerful chord of understanding. The grand synthesis, the unifying aha moment of Gladwell's investigation is this: success is not an individual achievement. It is a gift. It is the product of a delicate and complex ecology of advantages, a tapestry woven from the threads of when and where you were born, who your parents were, what opportunities your community afforded you, and what cultural toolkits you inherited. The outlier is not simply the tallest, strongest tree in the forest. They're the tree that grew from a superior seed in the richest patch of soil, that happened to get the most direct sunlight, that was spared from the blight that felled its neighbors, and that was lucky enough to be a species of tree that humanity suddenly decided it needed for its most important projects. The myth of the self-made man is just that, a myth. It's a profoundly misleading and ultimately hollow story. Every success story, when you dig deep enough, is a story of community, of legacy, and of serendipity. Look again at our examples through this new, unified lens. Bill Gates didn't just have 10,000 hours. He had them because he was born at the perfect moment. Just old enough to be a pioneer in the personal computer revolution, but not so old as to be tied to the mainframe era. He was sent to a private school that, through a series of fortunate events, had a computer club. He was the product of a specific time and place. The Beatles weren't just a talented band who worked hard. They were a band who got the Hamburg opportunity, which allowed them to become masters of their craft just as the wave of the British invasion was about to crest. The most successful New York lawyers of a generation, like Joe Flom, weren't just smarter than everyone else. They were the children of Jewish immigrants who, because of anti-Semitism, were shut out of prestigious white-shoe law firms. This disadvantage forced them into the less respectable work of litigation and hostile takeovers. And then, in the 1970s and 80s, the world changed. Hostile takeovers became the most lucrative field in law, and these lawyers, who had been honing their skills in obscurity for decades, were suddenly the most sought-after experts on the planet. Their apparent disadvantage was, in fact, the source of their greatest opportunity. The story is the same everywhere you look. Success is a convergence. It is the intersection of individual effort with a series of unearned advantages, historical accidents, and cultural legacies. It's not that hard work doesn't matter. It matters immensely, but it is the final ingredient, not the first. The playing field is not level, and it never has been. Acknowledging this doesn't diminish the achievements of Outliers. It contextualizes them. It makes them more, not less, miraculous, because it reveals the incredible series of fortunate events that had aligned perfectly for their talent to ever see the light of day. So we have journeyed from a simple question about success to a profound revelation about the nature of human potential. We began by dismantling the myth of the lone genius and discovered the critical role of accumulated advantage and the 10,000 hours of practice it allows. But we couldn't stop there because we saw that opportunity itself isn't distributed randomly. It is guided by the invisible currents of cultural legacy, history, and pure, dumb luck. The grand idea, the one that changes everything, is that outliers are the beneficiaries of particular history and a supportive environment. Their success is not just their own. It belongs to their parents, to their culture, and to the time in which they were born. What, then, is the blueprint for us? If success is not entirely within our control, does that mean we should simply give up? Absolutely not. It means we must shift our focus. Instead of solely trying to cultivate our individual grit or talent, we must become architects of opportunity. For ourselves, this means we must learn to recognize the unique advantages our own histories and legacies have given us and seek out the fields where those advantages matter most. It means looking for our own Hamburg, that unique situation that, while perhaps grueling, will allow us to accumulate our 10,000 hours. For our communities and our society, the implications are even more profound. It means we must stop hunting for naturals and instead focus on creating systems that give more people the chance to put in the work. It means building more computer clubs like the one at Lakeside. It means understanding that a child's birth date or their parents' income should not be the primary determinant of their future. It means creating a world with more fertile soil so that more tall trees can grow. This understanding is the first and most critical step, but knowledge without action remains inert. The real change happens when we apply this insight to our own lives and our own communities. It begins with a decision to see the world not as a competition of isolated individuals, but as a collaborative ecosystem where we all have a role to play in cultivating success. If this journey of discovery resonates with you, if you believe in looking deeper and understanding the hidden forces that shape our world, then join us. Subscribe to this channel, not just to watch videos, but to become part of a community committed to this deeper way of seeing. It's a commitment to recognizing the unearned gifts in your own life and a pledge to help build a world where more people are given a chance to share theirs. Because the ultimate truth of Outliers is that no one ever makes it alone.